Welcome to the top 10 worst mothers of the 2010s. I'll be your host, and I'm doing this for two reasons. One, because there are a lot of people who use relationships as a stigma or as a stereotype. So they'll say, oh, you're stupid. I bet no woman would ever like you. They basically have this idea that a person being intimately involved with someone else is an indicator of how well adjusted they are, or if they're in the right of mind, something to that effect. And I always have, for the last couple of years, tried to explain that when you look at the crazy things that some of these parents have done, they confirm that being with someone is not a confirmation of whether someone is insane or not, or above being creepy or weird or evil or any other term you could think that would negatively describe a person. Secondly, I will admit my jealousy for the second time in a couple of weeks. As someone who wanted to be a parent but was not able to get an individual that reciprocated enough to go on a date, much less get married and have children, the rest of that, seeing individuals who are able to do it and subsequently waste the potential of their children, giving them some stable environment with concern and financial backing and just the things people need to survive in the 21st century is really a slap in the face. But I am fair, so if there are instances where I think the father could have been better or could have assisted with this or made it, had some kind of bearing on it, I'll bring that up. And I'm not above reproach, so I'm not trying to make this out to be some all women suck kind of thing, because I'm actually going to make this point later on, but most mothers, even if I think a lot of them in the current era just have children as, the status symbol and use them to take stupid pictures to post online, and have no foresight, which is why so many are born to these parents that can't take care of them. Most would not do the things you will see from the ones on this list. But because they are mothers, because they happen to use the pronoun of she and have something shaped like that in between their legs, they get these weird defenses in some cases, which you're going to see as I go down this list. And there's also no particular order. The first one is only where it is because it's the one I've known for the longest. And the 10th one, which is what we're going to start with, is on here because I wanted to make sure that one of my subs, Ruben, who had recommended it, was not forgotten. Because sometimes I'll edit something and things will just fail to cross my mind in that immediate moment. So let's begin. Number 10. Michelle Martins. In August 2016, officers in Albuquerque, New Mexico found a dismembered body of 10-year-old Victoria Martins in the home of her mother, Michelle Martins. An autopsy revealing that the child had been sexually assaulted, strangled to death, and subsequently stabbed. While Victoria did not have a criminal record, she admitted to seeking men online that would engage in sexual activities with her children while she watched, and stated that her daughter had been given both alcohol and metamorphine to calm her down so two men could have sex with her. In June 2018, Victoria pled guilty to a charge of child abuse. So once again, I just want to emphasize that I don't see her as being any less horrible than the other 9 people on here. This is just so I could remember to put it in, because there's a lot of disgusting stuff on here. But you basically got a bimbo who has a weird fetish of watching, let's just call it what it is. She's a pedophile. She enjoys watching her children be assaulted by grown men. And she was able to operate as a normal person, no criminal record, while still having this weird fetish that she one day took too far, because she gave, and this is the disturbing part, yeah, Victoria would probably still be alive if she hadn't been given the alcohol and the metamorphine. But if she lived, and this woman, her mother, presumably enjoyed doing this and had done it in the past, would that have been any better? And I'm not, again, this is like, I'm not trying to compare this to a mercy killing or anything, but I don't see a scenario where there was any chance for that child to not get molested over and over. And go back to the autopsy, she was sexually assaulted, strangled to death, and after she's a corpse, stabbed, just for the hell of it, and then cut in all kind of pieces on her birthday. Also, Victoria, the mother of Victoria, rather, Michelle, is presently not in jail because they're the two men that were caught with her are having their trials take place. So after that, she'll have her trial, and hopefully she spends the rest of her life in prison. Number 9, Nicole Kelly. In July 2014, 22-year-old Kelly was charged with the second-degree murder of her son, 11-month-old Keum Felix Jr. Officers reported that Kelly had wrapped her child so tightly that he could not move or breathe, and that after Kelly was taken into custody, she reflected, "I reached my breaking point. I didn't want him anymore." Now, I've had multiple problems with this, one of them being that, because you're not going to see me I can't express disgust at each one of these without it seeming kind of redundant, even though it all is gross. But his mother was so stupid that she apparently forgot what an adoption agency is. She apparently, I guess, thinks that once you pop out a child, you can't give it to someone else when you don't want it anymore. And that's why I was saying that a lot of these chicks in the modern era have the mentality to just flip their mind or change their mind like someone changes shirts on major, huge decisions. You see a broad who just gets up one day after having a son for almost a year. I don't want him anymore. Time to tie him up. And look, I'm not trying to say that the ones that have said no to me or to other men are somehow as horrible as these ones because they haven't murdered anyone. This is a completely just grotesque escalation of that character trait. But you know that if you're a man, you've seen plenty of chicks who will basically one day want to speak to you. I remember I had one of them who, after I expressed interest, said she didn't want to talk to me anymore. Within 3 hours, she went, "Oh, I still want to speak." So this is just the person being too dumb to know what an adoption agency is, and being too evil to being just a piece of garbage. But let's continue. Number 8, Alexis Brooke-Waite. In February 2018, Covington, Georgia resident Alexis Brooke-Waite pled guilty to the death of her 1-month-old son, Jamal Terry Jr., who she admitted to holding by the waist and shaking for 40 seconds before he stopped breathing. The death was ruled a homicide when it was determined the baby died of a traumatic brain injury, and White was sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 30 years. White's attorney, Anthony Carter, defended her, saying this was a tragic incident involving a very young single mother who was in a bad relationship and had no support group. Aww. She lost her patience and caused the death of her child. Instead of going to trial and making the state prove its case, Ms. White chose to take responsibility for her actions. She is very sorry for the loss of her child and for the pain she has caused others. Hopefully she can find a way to give back to society while serving her sentence, and if she is granted parole after serving 30 years in prison. So this is one of the cases I was talking about. You have a broad picks up this little, and you know, we all know about how fragile babies are. That's why people get so scared when it looks like you're going to drop one of them. She has the audacity to shake this child where it gets a traumatic brain injury. And then her BSing lawyer tells us she is very sorry for the loss of her child. Apparently not sorry enough to have not done it. And it was a tragic case involving a single mother. A very young single mother. You would think she was a 1-month-old the way this person describes her. A very young single mother. You know, it's even creepier when you consider that the average age of women when they have a child is the first time is 22. So theoretically, I mean, she's not that much younger than that age. So so I said lawyers and just people that are trying to have defenses say all kind of weird, random, stupid stuff to try and make the person that they're defending seem like they did something that wasn't as awful as it actually is. Having no support group meant that she had to shake her child until it died, apparently. That's a very brilliant conclusion by, I'm sure, a very smart lawyer. Number 7, Jahina Pratt, a 24-year-old who was found to have put fentanyl in the sippy cup of her 17-month-old daughter in an attempt to get her to sleep while she did marijuana, after being found guilty of involuntary manslaughter and endangering a child's welfare. Pratt was sentenced to 5 to 10 years in state prison. District Attorney Diana Page reported that medical examiners found 1,100 nanograms of fentanyl in Pratt's daughter, enough to kill 2 horses, and Page opined that Pratt showed complete disregard for her daughter and thought smoking was more important than caring for her child. Pratt's defense attorney, Matthew Capon, noted her age of 23 at the time of the crime, in arguing that the adult brain is not fully developed until 25, that she lacked any stable family support system, and had left an abusive relationship. So, it is true that the brain doesn't fully develop until 25, but if you're 23 and you can't decide that taking care of your child is more important than smoking some pot or weed or whatever the hell, I don't think in another 24 months that's going to magically appear in your head. And just when you look at the fences, she didn't have a stable family support system. There are plenty of single parents that do not murder their children, who have no family support system. So, you know, she is in the minority who, you know, if we go by the logic of this lawyer, are crazy enough to where when they don't have this wonderful support system that was going to make everything so much better and change this person into caring more about their kid than pot. I mean, just think of how insane that is. Just when you say that out loud, her leaving an abusive relationship contributed to her valuing a substance to get ecstasy off of more than her own seed. And look at that, 1,100 nanograms of fentanyl in her daughter. It'd be nice if she saved $1,100 to send her kid to school or to get her a bigger house or something that actually can make that child's life better, instead of it's just being self. And that's really what modern parenting is in a lot of cases. It's selfish people. And in the case of these mothers, being able to use their vagina to escape any responsibility for their actions. Oh, her brain wasn't fully developed. I could actually buy that excuse if she was 3 or 13 or some age below that of an adult. The second you turn 18 and you do something that is violent, that you didn't have to do, I don't really, and it's like, this isn't self-defense. This is killing. This is being complicit in the death of your own child because you are too stupid to value its life over some crap. Number 6, Megan Huntsman. This one is, Huntsman in June 2015 pleaded guilty to 6 counts of felony murder and was sentenced to at least 30 years in prison before she could become eligible for parole. Officers were called to Huntsman's residence a year prior when her estranged husband reported finding a baby wrapped in a plastic bag in the garage. Huntsman admitted to police that she had either strangled or suffocated 6 children after giving birth over a decade-long period between 1996 and 2006. In a statement read by her attorney, Huntsman said, "Depression and alcohol took hold of me the same way drugs did. I cannot give a reasonable answer why I was capable of such a sick and heinous crime. I held my secret for 18 years. So here's my thing. If it had been one child and drugs and alcohol took hold, because people do things when they're intoxicated and inebriated, you might maybe be able to get me to say, okay, that's a person with no criminal record. It happened one time. No excuses, no attempts to make it seem as if it wasn't murder, but it was still, the circumstances would be minimal enough for me to believe that it's not a person just trying to make stupid excuses for being the devil. But to do it 6 times, like you pop out a kid and then you kill it over and over and over and over again. And I'm supposed to believe it was just depression. She was depressed for 10 years straight. Every day for a decade, she just drank alcohol. Like, who believes that? I'll tell you who, the same clowns that tried to defend the last 2 people on this list. I'm sure if she had had a stable family support system, she would have been able to make the right move to, what was the other nonsense they wrote? She was a very young, actually this one was on when it was in her mid-30s, but she was a very young single mother in a bad relationship. Her husband was estranged. I could just picture someone saying that stuff because they did it for the other ones. It's never their fault. Remember, I get blamed as a man for if some chick decides to not date me, but these bimbos and evil whores can't get blamed for killing their own children with their bare hands. Number 5, Riona Nichols. After her 1-year-old son died, Riona claimed that she shook him and hit him on the legs with a shoe as punishment after the boy pulled a TV off of a dresser. Her son had died from blunt trauma to the head, meaning whatever really happened was much worse, according to law enforcement. So let's pretend that the son actually did pull the TV off the dresser. Do we really have to spank a 1-year-old? Like, just think about that. Look, if it's 5, 6, 7, 8, okay, fine, whatever. I'm gonna give him a tap. You can have it. As far as me, even if I don't agree with that practice, still not casting blame or doubts upon the parent for having some method of punishing their child for doing what is wrong. But a 1-year-old, and the reality is this was just another bimbo who was a hothead, had no patience, which are, the latter is a trait you do need when you're dealing with children because they don't know any better, and it's your job as the goddamn parent to teach them right from wrong. But instead of any of that, you do something I don't like, even though you are literally a year old, I'm going to punish you, and that's going to somehow be better because we all know 1-year-olds can talk and, fully be aware of what they did wrong and whatnot. That's why we send children to kindergarten at 1 year old, right? Because they're developed enough to learn stuff. Okay. And number 4, Linda Nguyen. In August 2019, Nguyen was arrested after her 14-year-old and 4-month-old were found dead in their garage, and she left a suicide note detailing her intent to kill her children and herself. This one's a little bit more harder to kind of go after. well, it's harder for people to defend because they can't do that young mother crap. Because this one, just like Huntsman, so number 6, both over 30 years old. So, you can that. But this seemed to be a normal person up until she decided to do this. And that's why I said a lot of these chicks just flip the switch on you. Apparently she didn't die and she was in the hospital, but I didn't see any updates after that. So, moving on. Number 3, Cassandra Rose Duhan. In May 2017, Duhan violently shook her 4-month-old daughter Anastasia to death. Duhan's defense counsel, Seamus Rafferty, argued that Duhan had a difficult childhood that was without love and devotion, in part due to her violent and abusive father. Aww. So she's trying to rectify her violent and abusive past by creating a violent and abusive present. What a great idea. Telling you, it's like people just, they see a vagina, they have to jump in the way to defend it. It's like when Piccolo defended Gohan from Nappa's beam. That's what they do with these chicks. They go, oh man, well, she murdered her own child. Well, what was her background like? I even told the story of the lady lacking logic and her response to the broad with the baby and all the little nonsense she was saying. She probably had trauma in her background. And, when you have trauma in your background, she didn't say this part, but this is me adding it, that makes you open your legs and spit out kids you can't afford. And we have to now all come around and cuddle around her and tell her that it's going to be okay because, it's not like we can just say, hey, you did something really stupid. Stop doing that. It's going to destroy lives, including the one of the kid that's in your womb. Oh, no, we can't do that. Okay, so more of that difficult childhood nonsense. I don't really see how, I could come on here right now and say I had a difficult childhood. You think if there was a news article of me violently shaking a 4-month-old to death, people would give a damn about the hard childhood of Justin, and his mom didn't take him to a baseball game and all that nonsense that no one would care. But it's not because I have not experienced any personal struggles. It's because I don't have a set of melons and a taco. Let's put it that way. That's the real reason. And I'm glad that they would actually be upset with me over that, but they should be like that with everyone who does something like this. Number 2, the Watkins mothers who agreed to let the singer rape their babies. So I like a couple of Lost Prophets songs. And their lead singer was sentenced to 35 years in jail in December 2013, Ian Watkins, due to child sex offenses, and the 2 mothers of the children he abused were jailed for 14 and 17 years. The mothers to this day have not been identified by name, but it was confirmed that one of them was 21 and obsessed with Watkins. So basically they wanted to have children with him that they would take turns raping and molesting and doing all kind of other pedophilic behavior to. And I think if it were to come out that there was, let's say, a female singer who was a molester and there was 2 guys who tried to help her with this and they wouldn't release the 2 guys' names, people would probably say that's really ridiculous. We need to know who these SOBs are so we can make sure that we don't let anyone we know get around them. They're dangerous menaces. I don't care if they're in jail, they're going to be out at some point. And that's what just kills me about this case, because I agree with these people who tried to do this little sexual assault, child molester ring, all being jail. But you're not going to tell us their name, even though it is very possible they're going to get out and redo the exact same thing. Number 1, Jamel Peterkins. Peterkins was upset her boyfriend began dating a new woman, so she attempted to get back at him by abusing their 1-year-old via placing a bag over his head and later into his mouth and burning his hand in over 50 videos. Her former boyfriend, however, did not see any of these videos or pictures due to being incarcerated. And his girlfriend posted them online to get the attention of officers local to Peterkins. Peterkins was brought in for questioning after the videos were posted. The reason this is number one entirely has to do with the fact that it was the earliest of these cases that I became familiar with. So, for those of you that remember the Jeremy Meeks saga, it was a guy that had a picture that went viral of his mugshot, and all these chicks got all horny and whatnot. And I kept bringing it up because when I was doing the romance stuff regularly, I would mention how people kept trying to tell me about how I needed to be this wealthy, in shape person and all this stuff, right? But then you've got some man who we probably can tell from just the fact that he's in jail, does not own anything. And he's able to have a bunch of chicks fetishize about getting with him solely because of his face. But I bring it up just because that's similar to like, how do you, it feels almost, it's one of those details where they feel too convenient. So the fact that this man was in jail while she was trying to get back with him or get revenge, it just feels so convenient to a lot of the narratives that I tell, which is that a lot of the stuff that people on here try to insist is what you need to get with someone is just BS. And it's proven by the various people that we know and we see. You know, that's why I use the Benjamin Franklin quote, believe none of what you hear, only half of what you see. But she was brought in for a line of questioning. Apparently she's not been to jail. And this really bothers me because the only reason that even happened was due to the fact that I guess you'd call it stepmother. No, I'm not going to use that term. The girlfriend of the baby's father went on his phone, saw this stuff, actually had empathy, and posted online and said, what the hell is this? Look at this stuff, this evil piece of excrement decided to do to her own child. I mean, those videos and just hearing that kid scream as you see its mother burning its hand. And look, this is one of the points I'm trying to, like, the reason this bothers me more than the other ones is because, yes, what happened to all of the others is also awful. But they can all be chalked up to a story that you read on some website. You click it off and then that's it. I heard about this case when it first happened in early 2017, and I've never forgotten the sound of that kid screaming because its waste of life, worthless mother decided to burn it to get revenge at a man who wasn't even worth having a bunch of chicks lust after him. But I can't wait to hear it be spun that, oh, she, you know, was just in love and she was young. Because she is young, you know, early 20s, whatever. Still doesn't make it right. Like I said, if there was a video of me, whether I was current, you know, 22, 21, 20, 12, I would be burning a little kid's hand and just sitting there going, you gonna regret the day that you left me, and saying some woman's name in 50, 60 videos and putting a bet. Like, I would be the modern equivalent of Hitler. And I would have every right to be that. I would not be upset at people for treating me like the piece of trash that I was were I to actually do something like that. But the thing is, when you have people who've done stuff such as this, depending on what sexual organs they have, they tend to get away with it. So she's number one because that video to this day has never left me. This case has bothered me for years. And, you know, it really just exposed me. I mean, right as this case happened, it was around the same time I put out the Wild on Approach video, the one that went viral. And it's like you leave the chick thing because you get so sick of the stagnation, you know, the broads who talk to you for 2, 3, 4, 5 months, then either get with someone else or say they're not interested, or just the nonsense, the repetition of it all. And then a broad who actually gets to go all the way, gets to go on the date with this man, gets to screw him, have children with him, decides to waste it by, and not only, because see, when I think of waste, it is, it's not an indictment on the child ever. I always say that the bimbo with the baby, that comment is reserved strictly for her. I think the child will have a horrible upbringing because of the circumstances it was born into, which have nothing to do with it. But the reason this one is wasted is because it's bad to have kids you can't afford. It's one of the stupidest things you can do. But it is pure evil to do what was depicted in that video. There should be marches and pitchforks and all kind of outrage. And I don't even see any updates about this case. Nobody talks about it. For all I know, that piece of excrement still has the kid. Told you, you don't see anyone writing stupid comments to any of these chicks. You don't see any of them attempting to shame them. I mean, think of how insane this is. I get called a rapist and a homosexual over doing a video. But bimbos who murder their own children don't have anyone making stupid, pictureless YouTube accounts to write nasty stuff about them. But that's because it's not trendy to talk about this, because we have this feminist society that tries to make every single villain some tragic character. Oh, she didn't have a support system, and oh, she was only 20, and oh, her husband left her, and oh, she had an abusive dad, and she was in a bad relationship, and blah, 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 blah. Just admit that these people are waste of life, who, if there was any justice in this world, would be sterilized. And it wouldn't be that the position of mine would not be due to the fact that they didn't want to get with me or with some other person that's online that has had trouble with chicks. It's because they had the opportunity to actually make their private parts work to better society, i.e. having children you can actually afford and that you're not going to abuse. And they squandered it in the most possible way. The worst possible way, rather. You know, like with the bimbo with the baby, right? I talk about how stupid this chick is. I talk about how dumb she is. For as just ridiculous as she is, and for as dumb as I think it is to have children you can't afford, I don't believe she would murder her kid under any circumstance. I look at her as a shorter female version of Forrest Gump, except without the humanity and concern for others. So at the end of that movie, Forrest was concerned his son would have the same mental deficiencies, and that's why he started to cry. You know, this bimbo with the baby knows that her kid is going to grow up in some crappy environment just like her. And, you know, that let's just keep the same stupid cycle going. And the reason that bothers me so much is that you would have people who would come on here and say, oh, well, you know, you were admitting that she had a bad background. I can choose her. But to have that person who is an adult say, my background sucked, I wouldn't want anyone else to go through this, and then they open up their legs, and because they're too lazy to stick a piece of rubber on the banana that goes in, or the key that goes in their locker, the banana that goes in their taco, they repeat the exact same cycle. And that's why I think that most of these chicks are scum. Because I'll leave you with this. When I told, the Lady Lacking Logic, for those who haven't seen my other stuff, is this chick that I spoke to for 10 months that was stupid enough to say that I would prematurely cut off a woman that was interested. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to say as someone I spoke to for almost a year. But I had told her about the broad with the baby when she was first announced to be knocked up. And she is told by me, because I've known that person my entire life. I know about their background. I know about, in having conversations with them, the views they had just a few years ago. And it was this complete reversal. When I found this out, and when she starts talking about she probably has trauma in her background and how she herself is empathetic toward people who are struggling through their lives. And this whore has the audacity to say that as someone that has critiqued me repeatedly over the choices I have made with the romance stuff, which is judging. She tried to then redefine the definition. That person can be categorized as someone who is not as bad as the person who murders their child, obviously, but is an enabler because they make excuses for people who do things that they themselves would never do. And I don't think that's a very difficult thing to figure out what the difference is, where I can say, sure, that person doesn't cause the problem, but they enable the problem. So, like someone who sees this, right? They want to comment, that's fine. They comment and they say, oh, well, those chicks are, they had trauma and all that's enabling the problem because you're actively looking for excuses for why these people did something demonic, something monstrous to their own flesh and blood. You read a story about a bimbo who killed 6 of them over a 10-year period, just kept popping them out to murder. And you want to tell me about the trauma that she had? Well, hell, if you're in your late 20s to late 30s and you over 10 years can't figure out how to get out of that trauma and depression, then just offer yourself. But people who defend that stuff, I don't want to be around because it physically disgusts me sometimes to even read this stuff, especially when watching that video. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that as a man, I get criticized over so many damn things because it pertains to the romance stuff. When I came on here, talked about the chick things, I was talked negatively in reference to my hobbies, because we all know no one who's ever been into politics has ever been married. That's why all the politicians are single, definitely. I was spoken regarding my appearance, which I'm not ashamed of the way I look, the way I speak, clothing, hair, just a billion different ways, right? But when you see a group of chicks, not 1, not 2, not 5, hell, not even 10, because there were ones I had to cut out of here, that do something criminal, that snuff out the life of their own seed, they get what could be considered the double P, I'm not going to say the word, a certain pass having to do with their gender. So as long as that pass exists, I will be the antithesis. I will treat them the exact, because I believe in actual equality. So I think if I were to do any of the things that were on this list, I deserve to be called names, to be told all kind of horrible stuff about who I am, to go to prison if I did the things that were on this list. But in believing that should be my fate, if I were to do those things, that should be the fate of everyone on that list for actually doing those things. So people who think any of this is good are enablers. People who think this is gross, I agree with. And that's all there is to it. We need to up the standards for what women get to have children, because the only reason a lot of these broads even were able to reproduce, and I've said before, is because the man helps them create them. If no man around any of these chicks that were in this video said, or did rather, perform intercourse, none of this would have happened. If none of them, just the whole group, right? But that's why I said that when you're a man, you have to appeal to people verbally, comedically, physically. And if you're a chick, you just have to appeal vaginally. You just got to have that biological, those sex organs that by virtue of your gender, every single person in that category would have. It's just really unfair. And what's even more unfair is the fates of these children. So I'll continue to be upset over it, whereas society will continue to try and pretend as if trauma and bad backgrounds can justify being a waste of life piece of garbage who should rot in hell for the remainder of eternity.